It's Mr. Christopher with the Funkatopia radio show, and we always talk about all different types of music and all different types of bands, and of course the name of the website is Funkatopia. So we support a lot of bands all throughout the country, actually all throughout the world. And one of my favorite performers that seems to have his hands in a lot of different things is the one and only Robert Walter, who is joining us today to talk about a brand new release from the Greyboy Allstars. And how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great considering everything. Doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's a little bit of it's just kind of, what's surprising to me though is that even though with everything going on, you still manage to stay very, very busy. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, trying to. That kind of helps me keep my sanity. And we had a number of projects that we were sort of prepping for release during this. So it's actually a kind of a fun time for me. It's just being able to put out all the stuff that we've had in the sort of vault.
Right. Now, I think the last time you were on the show, I don't think we did a video version. I think we did an audio version. And we were talking about your release, Spacesuit, I believe it was.
Yeah, that's correct. About a year ago, I guess.
Yeah, it was a great album. And so now a lot of people don't know this about you because, it doesn't advertise your name on the front of it or Denton's name on the front of it. So a lot of people just kind of see these band names and don't realize who was all in these various projects, because there seems to be a very, very, with this particular group in particular, a lot of the players seem to bounce around to a lot of various projects here and there. So for those who are not familiar with Greyboy Allstars, kind of give them the rundown of who is in it, and also, how you guys got together and when you got together, and just give a little history of the Greyboy Allstars for those that don't know.
Well, the current band is myself, Elgin Park plays guitar, Carl Denson plays saxophone, and Chris Stillwell plays bass, and Aaron Redfield is our drummer. Back in the earlier days, we had a different drummer, Zach Nager, who now plays with Carl's band. So I guess, and that's the only major change. On the first like sort of 6 months or a year, there was a couple other players in and out of the band, but it's been pretty much that same lineup, for the last 26 years now. And we all have our own solo things, and we play on each other's stuff, and then we all do work with other people. It's sort of, as time went on, we kind of stretched out into all these different places, and we still come back together every once in a while. And, the band still has a great chemistry. It's fun to do. I think when we were only doing that band, we were touring so hard that we got it was almost overwhelming. And then in the last, 10 years or something, we only come together and do it when we really are feeling it, and it makes it a little more special, I think.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this project more than anything is that you guys maintain a lot of the great funk. I think the last release that you had was from like 7 years ago, and some projects we see that kind of you'll come into the fray and then disappear for a long period of time, and you're like, are they broken up? Are they still, like bands like Garage de Trois, things like that, where you don't know if they're still together or they're not together. So I guess there was this like long period of time for the Greyboy Allstars. But what has been going on, I guess with you in particular, I know that you did, as we mentioned before, the last time you were on was that you had a solo release in the 7 years. What else has been going on during that 7-year hiatus and other projects that you've been working on since then?
It's funny that band, although we don't release albums that often, we work every year. We play some gigs. We don't do as much touring as we used to, but we end up doing, a number of 30, 50 gigs sometimes, and we'll play like festivals, long weekends, do stuff like that. Also, the other thing we do is, I work on our guitar player, Mike Andrews, who is Elgin Park, known as Elgin Park in the band. He's a film composer. He works on a lot of TV and film music, and I play on a lot of his stuff. Chris Stillwell plays on his stuff sometimes. Carl's touring with his band that has Chris in it. So we're all kind of like working in these different little sort of pods of members of the group a lot. So it's not like we're out of touch with each other and then we come together every 5 years or something. We're constantly working and talking to each other. I play a lot of the same festivals as Carl, and we'll play gigs together that way. So that's sort of how we do it. And I think, I personally don't like to just do one thing. I have fun working in the studio. Sometimes I like to be a sideman and work for other people. Sometimes I like to lead my own stuff. So I just kind of keep it varied. So I'm always interested and I'm always learning stuff.
So I know that Greyboy Allstars, you referred to yourself as seminal boogaloo revivalist. Kind of walk us through exactly what that is for those, maybe what that is, and maybe who previous seminal boogaloo artists may have been that you feel like you kind of marry up with.
So boogaloo music was really a thing that happened in Latin music, that incorporated like soul music and rock and roll and things with, but it comes out of the sort of Latin music world, and it was sort of grabbed by jazz artists in the mid to late 60s, who were playing. They're people who were jazz, like playing whatever you would call straight ahead jazz, hard bop or whatever, and then there became a big influence by rock and roll, soul music, R&B, things that were more in the popular realm. And that was the music that really hit us, was people like Grant Green and Leon Spencer and Charles Earl and Lou Donaldson, all these jazz artists sort of playing these popular tunes or these popular rhythms in a way. And we always identify with that more than like funk with a capital F, like funk bands. I mean, we all love James Brown and the Meters, but our music is somewhere, a little bit, more towards these like Prestige and Blue Note records from the 60s. So I think using the word boogaloo at that time was a way to sort of separate ourselves from other things happening. There was also at the same time in the early 90s, there was that acid jazz scene, which was more, I thought of as more of a DJ culture thing. And we were really looking at these records and wanting to emulate these artists. And the focus was on that sort of organ music from the late 60s, early 70s maybe. But at the beginning, we were pretty strictly trying to emulate that art. We felt that was like a novel thing to promote because not a lot of people were playing that at the time.
Yeah, I think that, acid jazz in general has always had, I mean, if people heard your album and they were forced to put it in a bucket, I would still think that, even though I know you said you felt like it was a little bit more DJ slanted, which is this case in like a lot of bands like Guru and things like that, but maybe not like brand new heavies or people that really weren't focused on that. So I think it would probably be forced to still be in that basket, because the brand new album is called Como De Allstars. So I guess before we start going down and talking about some of the feel of this album, which is very, very Caribbean, and then there's also a little bit of everything here. Tell me where the name of the album came from, and what your thought process was going in creating this album. Was it just I know this seems like a lot of questions packed into one. Was it just to kind of jam together and see what happened, or did you actually have a really focused view of what you wanted this album to be before you came and started working on it?
Well, the record was, there wasn't a plan, and whatever feels like it somehow feels like it holds together well to me. And we're not always that lucky. Like, we're so interested in so many different kinds of music where sometimes it's a little bit of a trick to sequence a record and figure out what's going to go on it, because there's kind of a wide variety of influences these days. And there's something about where we all were at the time, and also about the way we did it, which was very quickly, that makes this record sort of hold together. And it does sort of have a concept, even though that wasn't ever discussed. There's something magical that happened where we all were sort of thinking about the same things. But one thing that happened, we just wanted some more tunes to play live. And we thought, like, why don't we record? And we happened to have gig in Houston, I believe, that was canceled because of rain. So we had a night off, a rare night off on the road where we were all in the same place. We thought, we're all stuck here. What are we going to do? We could just like write off the night, or we could rent a space and get together and start writing some music. So we wrote about half the album in that first night that, you know, we just played. We probably got in there for 3 or 4 hours and just started working on a bunch of stuff, and it went so well. We thought, well, let's do one more of these. We did one more of those, and then we recorded the whole thing real fast too in like 3 sessions. So it's sort of, I think there was a thought to not overthink it and not try and, you know, put too much expectation into what is the concept of this, and just kind of capture in a more documentary way the feel of the band. And there's something great about the visceral, sort of natural thing that we do. And the title's sort of a joke upon, there's a expression in Spanish, I think you say it's Como De Costumbre, which is like as usual. And the joke was that we're doing the sort of usual thing. We're not the same old thing, you know, like, you know, the Meters doing. It's the same old thing, but it still feels good. And that was the idea, is that not reinvent it too much and just record ourselves being us. Strangely, a lot of it had like a Caribbean Latin flavor to it, and I don't think that was anyone's real plan. And none of us had been writing a bunch of tunes like that. We just thought, what are some different kinds of rhythms we can play with? And several of us, independently of each other, kind of came with music that had that, and it felt good. It feels like a summertime record to me, you know.
Yeah, it did feel like that. There's a couple tracks out there that seem the one that seems like a lone wolf to me is the song "Warm Brass."
Right. Now
most of the songs on there, as I said, really kind of have this salsa type of feel to it, with a little bit of, you know, Caribbean thrown in. It seems like that is the core feel. It's that kind of bouncy music. But there's this one song that is smack in the middle of the album called "Warm Brass" that really sounds like a little bit of an outtake of like a lost Beach Boys tune or a lost Beatles tune or something. It just has that feel. Can you tell me a little bit about "Warm Brass" and about that song?
So that Elgin Park wrote that tune, and he's singing it, our guitar player. And there's something that's sort of, so the Greyboy Allstars were always interested in not, you know, we were always resisting the thing of like everything has to be this hard funk and everything's got to drive super hard and be real masculine. And we were always into this like breezy thing, this part of like, there's like a tune on there that's sort of a bossa, and it reminds me of those CTI records. And another part of that whole thing is like sort of, you know, there's like a lot of funky kind of folk stuff going on, even Joni Mitchell's records with all those great players. And that was always kind of part of our aesthetic, that this is kind of the most literal version of that. But we just thought like this kind of fits in with this in my mind, even though it seems like sort of a stylistic departure. And I like that kind of stuff. I don't want it to be like by rote, you know, put a wah-wah guitar and a clavinet on it and there's your record. Like I want to be creative and do these things. So I think that's consistent with us. If it may feel weird to someone just checking it out, but it's always been sort of part of our influences and aesthetic, you know.
Right, yeah, and I think that's what I've always kind of appreciated about you guys when you get together. There's always some, it's very, very, I know I'm wearing a Prince shirt and I've got Prince stuff behind me, but, you know, Prince was very much like that too. It's just, this is music, it feels good, this is what I'm doing. I'm not really concerned about where it may or may not fit in. If it doesn't really fit in that well, I'll
honestly,
just put it
the process in playing a tune like
Right.
that feels exactly the same as the other ones.
Right.
Somebody starts playing, we're like, okay, I'll play that, and then we're all it's played live in the room. It's the same kind of thing exactly, you know.
Yeah. So I did hear some stories that I definitely want to get a little bit more information on. I heard that you guys rented some place in LA for a few days because the studio that you were working with was like really close to the location that you were working at. but there were all kinds of these little weird things that were going on, like tape machines being broken and whatnot. Can you kind of give me a little bit of stories where maybe you felt like something was working against you during this process? Or
I mean, I actually think it was all kind of great part of it. We worked at a great studio with a bunch of like vintage gear in it, but a lot of things were slightly broken. And we decided, like, I would pull out keyboards and just be like, we're going to use this anyway. It's sort of in the spirit of records that we like. And punching in on the tape machine was a little bit slow and awkward, so we couldn't really fix things. And so we decided kind of like, let's do this kind of in the old school way and just try and make takes and not fix stuff. So it ended up making us sort of perform in a different way where things were, you can kind of get ready for the take. Then we're rolling tape, here it goes, you better make it happen. And there really wasn't that much opportunity to fix things. And of course we could have gone back and put it in Pro Tools and fix things, but we sort of embraced that concept of really, committing to the performances, and I think it gives it a charm and like sort of a vibrancy that you don't get from something that's overly fixed and quantized and auto-tuned and whatever. So it's really a sort of a natural thing. And then, we were doing takes on this record, and then the tape machine was sort of like starting to show signs of wear, and it finally broke like on right after the last take of the last song that we had recorded. And we could have recorded more tunes. We could have done another take, or we could have got someone to repair it. It wasn't like broken, but it had to be looked at. And I think we all saw that as a sign of, we had one more day booked, but we said that's a sign that this is the time to stop. It was perfect. It was like right after we were all high-fiving and like, yeah, we got a whole record here. And then it was just, no more takes available. So I think there's something kind of poetic about that.
Yeah, I can appreciate the fact, I can appreciate where the rawness and just like, hey, this is what's happening. You're kind of almost like a live feel to it, kind of. And you're right that the lack of necessity to kind of go in and have to like tweak things out and like polish them, as you're saying, really is, one of the cool and endearing things, just like you mentioned. One of the things that comes to mind is like Bootsy Collins, sing. Oh, yeah.
I'm a big fan of music that's very like figured out and produced, and I love, production and, beautiful records, and I love when things are perfect. But I think there's a fatigue now because there's so many things. It's so easy to fix everything, and everything's like, your audio is so malleable because everyone's working in a computer, and I think I'm getting tired of hearing things like that. Like, I want to hear the squeak on the bass drum pedal, and I want to hear someone sing slightly off key occasionally. I want all this to feel like it's happening in the moment. So,
yeah. Who did the production on this album?
We produced it ourselves.
Oh, well, that's good, because you obviously have a good ear for you've been doing this long enough where you're like, yeah, I know what I want. That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah, Todd Burke engineered. He's engineered several of our albums, and some of mine, and some, Mike's. We've all worked. We work with like similar people all the time, but there was no real producer. We just sort of talked about what we wanted to do, and I like working both ways. But I think for this, it was sort of embracing us as us.
Yeah. So, which songs do you feel like are really standouts for you? Like, what is there a specific song that's on this new album that you are really, really proud of that you're
the thing to me that sort of like represents the album is there's a tune called Executive Party. That is a Chris Stillwell tune, and it's just we used to call it John's Cage after John Cage because it was so minimal, and John Cage had written that famous piece that was silent, and that was the original title, because it's really such a minimal, it's just one chord really and some breaks, and it sort of is us at our most natural. Like, it sounds like something you might come up with on a soundcheck jam or something. Not that there's no craft involved in writing simple music, because there is, but I think it really captures the feeling of the band and the interactions in a real natural way, because we're not thinking about like what's coming up next or is there an odd time to dodge or something? You know, it's very much like, you know, in the spirit of this thing, which is like this sort of live energy of what we're like.
Right. So has there been any thoughts about when you guys might be possibly getting to tour to support this album? I know we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and it's kind of hard to, you know, foresee a lot of things, but I know a lot of bands have already started booking things, you know, for 2021. Has that crossed your mind at all?
We had dates. I mean, there's still some on the books that are yet to be officially canceled, but we know that they will be. I think we're all kind of waiting to see what would be safe and what we can do. But we're all psyched to play, of course.
Right.
I mean, I'm got my fingers crossed for maybe, you know, Jazz Fest next year. I don't know if that's happening. That might be too soon to say. So as soon as we can, really.
Well, so one of the things I can tell you for fans that are listening who are interested in this album, you can certainly absolutely go listen to it on Spotify, but I would prefer you not do that. I would prefer you actually go and purchase the album digitally,
right,
or purchase
a
physical copy. Yeah, because you've heard me say it millions of times before. That does so much more to help support artists than 0.001 cent per stream does, for sure. And I think that's even generous. But that all being said, GreyboyAllstars.com, GreyBoy Allstars.com. And I also, before I let you go, I also heard that you have a brand new vinyl reissue of West Coast Boogaloo as well. What
came out, today, the 7th. I don't know if this is airing then, but
no, and it will be. So when people watch this, it will be available. And so, what was the decision on that? Was this something that people were really, really asking for? Or you just felt like this was a really good time to kind of to push this out via vinyl with the vinyl resurgence, or what was the decision process with that?
It's sort of a beloved album. It's been hard to find and out of print for a long time. And it also kind of makes sense with our newest album in a strange way, where it was recorded in a day in a real natural way like that. We basically just went in and played our set that we had been playing live, with the addition of Fred Wesley, which made it sort of special. But But it was really done in like 12 hours. We're all in one session, and it's the same kind of. They kind of bookend this part of our career in a certain way. Where in between we've done records that were more produced and had more guests on them and all kinds of stuff like that. This is like, I think they go together in a real nice way. And also we had been talking to Light in the Attic about putting out some of our music, and they were really interested in that. A couple of people had grown up listening to that record, and I think it means a lot to people. It sort of kickstarted a lot of this genre, at least in the United States. For the resurgence of this genre. Of course, we didn't start it, but we're the first to steal it, maybe.
Yeah, I think that every single band has that album that really kind of defines who they are, and that you really kind of build. That was one for you. I can think of On the Killian Floor for Orgone, and just there's certain albums that really have that the core of what they are and really kind of define them. So I was really happy to actually see that on vinyl. So definitely an opportunity to pick that up as well would be worth your purchase. I'm telling you, folks, it's an amazing album. You can certainly listen.
It's nice repackaging. It's remastered. It sounds a little better and louder, and it's got we did it on colored vinyl. There's a couple different options, and
what color?
It's nice. There's a couple extra photographs that you probably haven't seen in there. So.
Oh, nice. Okay. What color vinyl? You said there was a choice of different colored vinyls?
There's a purple one, and there's a tri-colored one that's sort of like the colors from the cover. And then I think eventually they'll go into black after we sell it this first run.
Right. Okay. Well, it is an honor to
black vinyl. I like the both. I kind of like the crazy ones.
Oh yeah, those are always great. I mean, I think I had 2 copies of the Times Ice Cream Castles, but then when they made this Neapolitan vinyl, I was just like, I guess I gotta have that.
Oh, you love that album.
But it's always an honor to have you on board. Robert Walter, we're talking about the album, the brand new album, Como De Allstars from the great, and it's from the Greyboy Allstars. And you can also pick up his stuff with Robert Walter's 20th Congress. There's lots of things. If you look up Robert Walter, he is like all over the place. And it's always an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us and kind of giving us a run on this album. Everybody head to greyboyallstars.com. That's with an E in gray. And make sure that you pick up the latest release, Como De Allstars. Thanks for joining us, man. I greatly appreciate you taking your time.
I appreciate it. It's good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you. All right, Robert. We'll see you later,
have a
brother.
good one.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.